Hello and welcome back. Welcome back. Wow, that's the first time I've ever said that. Yeah, welcome back to the Christian Reeve podcast. And we're doing more of these Christian only podcasts because is it really that bad to just listen to me? Really? Really, guys? No, I'm just kidding. No, I occasionally I want to do these because I want to dive into certain topics, and I thought about the idea of potentially bringing these topics up with my guests, but I think that's only really a good idea when I have my guests return, and because the initial podcasts I do with my guests are interview only, and they serve as a means to promote them, promote their projects, promote whatever they want to promote, and just kind of introduce them to my audience and help bolster them forward in some shape or form. But in terms of the additional ones, having people back on the show, hell yeah, we can talk about anything really. I'm open to anything. And as always, before we get into today's topic, I just want to say, if you're interested in coming on the Christian Reeve podcast, then please get in touch. I'm open to anyone. I would love to have you on the show. I would love to find out about you, and give you a chance to promote yourself. Give you a chance to put yourself over and say, hey, this is me. This is what I'm doing. This is what you have to look forward to. So anyway, to the main event. Now, I guess I was inspired to do this topic by what I saw Joe Rogan say, and then the subsequent clip that H3H3 released about this. I'm not sure when this particular podcast will drop, but maybe we're going to be, out of touch or time or whatever, late on the news. But, things move so quickly these days that it's impossible to keep up. And to be honest, this is more of a wider podcast episode in terms of approaching the issue, because I want to tackle it from different perspectives. That's why I named it "Are Video Games Harmful?" Because historically, video games have often had a bad reputation, and it all kind of dated back to when video games first kind of, I guess, came out in the 80s and stuff. And they've been around since the 70s, but there's always been little things here and there, like maybe inappropriate games for the Atari that were produced. I seem to recall there was like a porn style one, which was a bit taboo at the time. And then in the 80s and the 90s, you had a lot more developments in game graphics, and that meant that you were getting really violent games, and this has just continued on and on. I remember it being at its height in the early 2000s when PlayStation 2 and Xbox were out, and I would just constantly hear about oh, these games are too violent, oh, they're inspiring kids to get into drugs and kill people and all of this stuff. And you know what, I'm not outright refuting that. I think a case can be made for that. But I think to generalize is a bad thing with this, because I think video games do a lot of good. They can teach you a lot of skills, for example. Like, for instance, for me, it taught me hand-eye coordination. The very ability to be able to play a game and not look down at your hands while you're doing it is very tough. I remember when I was first learning to play a video game system, I believe I was about 3 or 4 years old, and I just couldn't rack my brains around that concept. I was trying to play the Super Nintendo or something, and I just kept staring at the controller, because I couldn't figure out that you had to lift your head up and kind of trust your hands and feel it. And it's something that you can kind of learn in other fields as well. Like, if you're learning to play guitar, then it's something that you can do. If you're really, really good at it, you kind of know where to put your hands, and you don't have to always look. But the point being that, in addition to that, there's a lot of like strategy games. There's all types of games that teach you all different things. It's not just, oh, this is a really violent game, oh, this is a waste of time. Like, there is so much more to video games, and I think you can only really appreciate that if you actively play them. Now, a lot of the people that seem to have these negative opinions on video games and the culture and everything in between often either haven't played video games, very much, or if at all, or they just kind of, they're missing the points. They're missing the kind of wider possibilities with gaming. And it's interesting now because obviously back in the day, you had many arguments, like I said, in society, like, are these games too violent? Are they causing our kids to go out and be violent? Particularly in countries, or continents, I should say, like America. And, violence in America has continued throughout the decades, just as it has in many other countries. And, it's not always necessarily 100% because of video games, but a case can be made for it. But then, you can argue this about other mediums. There's musicians such as Eminem and Marilyn Manson who in the past have been accused of, inspiring violence through their lyrics. And I guess it comes down to a point of like accountability. Do you make children, responsible for their own decisions and actions? Do you put the responsibility at the hands of the parents? I think many people would probably agree that's exactly where you should put it. But then there are others that say, no, the accountability should go to the musicians themselves for putting out this stuff that, is potentially damaging and harming. And you can make the same argument for video games manufacturers. Are they really serving the best interests of everyone by creating these violent, potentially, harmful games? But my personal opinion, I'm an avid gamer. I have been all of my life. And, I recall playing GTA 3 when I was 10 years of age. Now, GTA 3, the Grand Theft Auto series, is highly, highly violent. I know that all of my brothers who are much younger than me have played super violent games, even younger than I was. I was 10 at the time when I was playing it. They were playing violent games at the age of 5 or 6. And I'm not agreeing with that. I'm not saying that's okay. But at the same time, I feel that, there is a sense of disassociation or detachment from it. Because it is a game, It doesn't always necessarily infiltrate the mind of the person playing it that, this is something I could replicate in real life. Or that there is some sort of blurred lines between reality and what you've done in a video game. I mean, I think for the most part, it is one of those questions that's not very easy to answer like outright. I don't think that it's a direct causal factor in violence or anything that's negative, like taking drugs or something like that. I think for the most part, most kids growing up are sensible enough to realize that they are just video games and they're not harmful. They're just a thing that you do to pass the time, and you move on. I suppose one could make the argument that it's dangerous in terms of the desensitization to violence. Maybe by seeing so much violence in video games, you could potentially look at real violence and be desensitized to that and not understand just how harmful that is in real life. There is an argument for that. And I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that either. I guess I'm just saying that, I think it mainly comes down to choice, understanding, and also, I would say the parents. I think the buck kind of stands at the parents. It's up to the parents to explain to their children that, these are just games. This is not normal behavior that you should reenact in real life. I think that there should be a level of restriction in terms of what parents allow their children to see and consume. I know so many parents, and I've been around parents growing up that were very good at this, and they wouldn't have access, their kids wouldn't have access to these games until much later in life. So I really think it is down to upbringing and parenting, really. I mean, because it is about accessibility. If you have access to those games at a very young age and no one around you is restricting you or explaining to you the dangers of why this is something that you should avoid and why this is something that should not be replicated in real life, then that argument about it being harmful is valid. But again, it comes down to the parents. It comes down to them watching everything that their kids are doing and consuming, and making sure that they're not consuming that stuff. And if their kids do somehow get access to it, then they explain to them implicitly that this is not okay, this is not something that, like I said, they should be replicating, and it's just something that they need to be fully aware of and understand properly. Now, moving forward, in more recent times, and this is kind of more what Joe Rogan was talking about, there's this argument that video games are harmful in terms of, being a waste of time. And, I don't think you can really say that in this day and age, given that, video games are now a career. You have entire sports league, the esports league, for instance, where people actively go to events, watch people playing competitively, and consume it like a regular sport. There is a career now. It's something that more and more as society is moving forward is being taken seriously as a serious career. Now, there are kind of harmful other effects because of gaming, such as not being active. Obviously human beings need to be active. We need to go to the gym or do exercise and stuff to keep ourselves healthy, to keep ourselves living long and healthy lives, and to be honest, being more sharp and aware and being able to do things like endless gaming sessions. Like, you need to be healthy in order to do that. And again, I think at least with kids growing up, the buck falls again at the parents, in terms of making sure that their kids are being active and not just spending all of their time on playing games. I've seen so many parents over the years fail their kids by just not properly being strict enough in enforcing rules, and thus just letting their kids do whatever the hell they want. And then there's this kind of danger that once you do that, the kids become aggressive, and if you try to pull them away from their video games and their kind of state of being locked away in their room in the dark playing their games, then they're kind of far past fucked in terms of like pulling them back out again. You've got to be consistent with these things and make sure that your kids are kind of always having access to a bunch of things. That's not to say that you should restrict them and stop them from playing video games. I don't think that's a good idea at all. I think, and this is kind of a belief that I have in life in general, is that you should always have balance in all areas of your life. If you can get across to your kids that, hey, I want you to play video games if this is what you're passionate about. If you want to pursue something with video gaming, be it a YouTube channel, or you want to do streaming, or you want to just be a professional player, that's fine. But you also need to have a balance in your life in order to make sure that you're healthy and sharp enough to do it. You see, it all comes down to the way you say things as well. I'm not saying it's easy to communicate with kids or teenagers about why things are important, but certainly the way you approach these things is kind of important. Like if I had a kid now, like a teenage son or a daughter, and I was trying to explain this to them, I would say, look, if you want to be sharp enough in your competitive play, you need to be healthy and exercise regularly so that you can keep your body, full of energy, and so you're actively ready and able to play for longer, and also so that you can keep your mind sharp so you don't get tired, you don't get bouts of sickness or headaches or anything like that. If you explain it to them in that way, the message is going to be received so much better than just aggressively saying, stop playing those video games, stop doing that trash, do something proper with your life. Like, there's been so many jokes about this in popular culture about how that approach to parenting just doesn't work. And, with video gaming, I don't see it being any different. Now, moving forward, there are many teenagers that have obviously become adults and become professional streamers or gamers. People like Ninja come to mind for me. And again, you can make your jokes, you can say like, oh, that's not a proper career and blah, blah, blah. But the end of the day, the guy is making a killing. He has a massive following. There's a lot of other people in his, I guess, field that are doing the same thing, and they're doing very well. Now, again, I would apply the same logic to him as I would to any kids or teenagers. I think that, at the end of the day, it comes down to having balance in your life. Like I said before, exercising isn't just good in terms of keeping you healthy and keeping your mind sharp, but it's also good in terms of, making sure that you're happy. Because, it's very easy to make the mistake of thinking that, whenever you're playing games, that's when you're happiest. And, anytime you're away from it, you're not. Because that's the danger of addictiveness. It's the same as becoming a smoker and then, being addicted to the nicotine and thinking that no, I need the cigarette because then I'll feel happy. That's the illusion. And that is a harmful side of gaming. Okay, gaming addiction is a harmful thing, right? But again, it goes back to that point that I'm making, this underlying point of balance. If you have that balance, if you don't play games all the time, you just play it, let's say you build a schedule for yourself and you say, hey, I'm going to play games actively for this amount of time. I'm going to make sure my streaming is at this time during the week. I'm going to do this, do that, and then make room for, having a healthy lifestyle, going out, make sure I'm going outside and doing exercising for a certain amount of time. You're making sure I'm going out and seeing friends and socializing and not just staying indoors all the time. Then you're going to be fine. It's all about that balance. Of course, it's not healthy to sit indoors all day playing games. But you can apply that to so many other different things. You can apply it to sitting and reading all day, or I don't know, I can't think of any examples readily to my mind. But look, it's like the saying goes, everything in moderation. And there is something that exists that suggests that, you can have too much of a good thing. So balance, people. In short, do I think video games are harmful? Yes and no. But I think anything can be harmful. I mean, take alcohol as an example, right? It's an extreme example, but it's the same thing. Everyone likes to have a drink. Not everyone, but most people like to have a drink in moderation, right? We all know the effects of alcohol. We know that we can become alcoholics and become addicted, and it can kill us, it can harm our livers, it can cause all sorts of diseases and all terrible things, and it can ultimately shorten our lives. But there's a healthy side to drinking as well, where you can just drink in moderation, maybe a glass of wine here and there with your meal, or a few pints of beer with a couple of friends. There's a way to do it and there's a way not to do it. And I think you can apply the same logic with gaming. Okay, yeah, gaming doesn't cause you to have physical pain or cause you to end your life early, but it can affect your health if you're not doing other things in addition to that, you see? And again, it backtracks to that whole balance thing. So, I guess I've kind of made my point. I just wanted to have a little kind of short podcast on that and kind of just throw my thoughts out about that, because I'm always going to support video games and video gaming. I think it's very reputable, and growing up, it taught me a lot. It taught me things like logic and the hand-eye coordination thing I spoke about, and in many ways it kind of inspired me, just the same as reading a good fantasy novel or watching a good sci-fi program. There's many games that are created that teach you all sorts of things, and they don't necessarily have to be like an educational game. They can just contain things within them that educate you or inspire you. For instance, you might be playing a game as a kid and be really amazed by like the artwork or graphics, right? And you might decide later in life, I want to go into graphic design, or Christ, maybe you want to become a video games programmer or a creator, and there are many people that wouldn't besmirch that kind of a career and wouldn't throw down that idea and say that's a bad idea. I mean, there's people that test video games for a living. There are so many different career paths you can take off the back of gaming, in addition to gaming itself. So I think that generally speaking, there are more positives than negatives with gaming. And if I could reiterate the point again, I would, and I'm going to. It's all about balance, people. Maintain balance, and no, video games will not be harmful to you. They'll only be harmful if you just allow them to be and don't maintain some sort of a balance in your life. Thank you very much for listening, guys. I hope you enjoyed this much, much shorter podcast. Maybe we'll do more of these in the future. I don't know. We'll see how they do. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. And yeah, let me know your thoughts on if video games are harmful or not. I've given you a very balanced idea of the arguments that have been made, and my thoughts and opinions and other people's thoughts and opinions. But I'd like to know what you guys think. Maybe there's something I missed. Maybe there are more dangers, or maybe not. I'd love to know. But until next time, guys, be safe, be well. Thank you very much for watching or listening to the Christian Reeve podcast. And until next time, I bid you adieu.